Welcome to the Predictive Playbook for the PGA edition. This week we're at the Congaree Golf Club in South Carolina. This is normally the RBC Canadian Open, but because of the border problems we're still having with the COVID, this event is taking its place. So this is a very unusual situation, having a lot of golfers not there because they're preparing for the US Open, but we still have guys like Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, who's the world's #1 player, playing at this event. But first, I want to introduce Nick Borrman to the show, and he is WagerTalk's. He's also a soccer guru too, which I'm learning he does very well at. But golf is his expertise. He's a golf PGA professional by trade and knows the sport better than most. So welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this week's, as you mentioned, a little different. New course. Always leading up to an event major, you can see these weak fields. So very tough to handicap when you especially have no course history. So it'll be fun. Try to figure it out. It'll be fun golf to watch, but really it's all about getting into next week for that US Open.
In doing the research for this event, I always like reading about the storylines, and we do have a good one I think this week in John Pack, and he was the PGA #1 ranked player, and he had an interesting story. He had to go to Muirfield Village before the memorial started. Was not allowed to play in it because he didn't have an exemption, but he still had to go there to receive the Jack Nicklaus Award from Jack Nicklaus himself, which is quite an honor, as the best college player in the nation. Problem was that he had no way to get there. So his coach at Florida State contacted Brooks Koepka, who is a Florida State alum as well. And wouldn't you know, Brooks just had a jet handy and provided it to him to get to Muirfield Village to receive his honor. So I thought that storyline was pretty cool. And John Pack is making his debut. He played it at the US Open last year and was the low amateur. I think he finished 57th at Winged Foot. And you and I have both played Winged Foot, and Winged Foot is a monster of a course. I don't care when you play it or how you play it. It's going to get your attention real quick. And that was an event that was won by Bryson DeChambeau last year. So in this event, how do you break this down with all these different, I would call them cross currents? You have the two elite players. One of my questions for you right off the top is, why are those two players, Koepka and Dustin Johnson, playing in this event when I think maybe they should be better off being at Torrey Pines out there in California getting ready for the Open?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that, playing in many events in my past is it all depends on what you're trying to do and what you're struggling with. We know DJ was struggling a little bit. Perhaps he was, taking that extra week last week, because most guys we talked about played last week at the Memorial to get ready and took this week off. But, perhaps him and his coach were working on something and we're getting somewhere and decided that, hey, we need another week to kind of, work on whatever he's working on. I haven't been able to look at to see if there was anything specifically he was working on. But it could just be preparation time, and then now it's a momentum builder for next week. Weak fields, maybe he's got a better chance to get a high finish. DJ makes sense here. It is native South Carolina for him, too. So close to home, easy to get to, not a lot of travel. But Koepka could be the health thing. We got the knee injury from earlier this year coming back, maybe really picking and choosing his spots. Why not last week at the Memorial and this week? I couldn't really say for sure, but it is interesting. And it does make these events very hard to handicap because these two guys it's very top heavy. These two, I was just looking out, I think there's 13 players on DraftKings that are under 50 to 1, and that's it. I mean, last week we had probably 15 players at 25 to 1 or less. So makes it very difficult and wide open and exciting for those that like long shots, because there's a ton of them this week you could throw money on.
Yeah, I'm looking at DraftKings right now, Nick, and Dustin Johnson is the favorite for obvious reasons at plus 775, so it's a little bit less than 8 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And he's less than 2 to 1 for a top 5, so I don't think there's too much value there. Koepka is 8.5 to 1. 225 top 5 and plus 110 even money essentially is a top 10. So of the golfers in this tournament, where do you find the value?
Avoid those two. play. I actually was taking Koepka over DJ. They have a matchup against each other. I mean, of those two guys you just mentioned, I mean, Koepka's trending in the right direction, coming off that tie for second at Keogh. DJ just hasn't been able to put together 4 rounds in a couple months now. So Koepka's definitely, in my mind, the favorite over that. And he was a small plus money price too. And then it's hard. I mean, admittedly, this is a light week for me. I mean, it's a new course, like you said. It's wide open. You got a lot of guys that are long shots by the books to win, and it's hard to get these smaller events right. So I usually take it a little bit lighter. Look for a couple of guys that you think might have good weeks. Hit them on the leaderboard, top 20. I mean, you can get guys at 10-1 for top 10s that are pretty decent players. And it's another good way to attack this event, and then just stick with the matchups is probably where I'll be focusing my attention mostly this week.
If I can ask you a couple of questions, because I always like knowing I'm on a possibility of a guy, a player for my DraftKings lineups, and honestly, I haven't decided what I'm even going to put one in for this event. I may just do maybe 1 or 2 instead of the normal 7. For the U.S. Open, I definitely do a full bore 7. Entries into the bigger contest. So for this event, Tommy Fleetwood, 26.5 to 1 to win. Top 5 is 5 to 1. Top 10, 2.5 to 1. Do you think he's a good guy to have this week?
Tommy is tough. He has up and down results on U.S. soil. I mean, he hasn't played the best over here, but then again, he's got the skill set to be there. And in a weak field event, there's no reason to think he wouldn't. I'm not in love with his price at 26 to 1, but I understand why he's priced where he is priced. So I don't hate him. Probably not going to be betting him personally, but I could get behind him. I have no argument against it.
And I just pulled up John Pack. He's 175 to 1, 28 to 1 for top 5, and 12 to 1 for a top 20. Maybe just throw pizza money on him just because he's making his debut and because of the cool story with Koepka just kind of casually giving him a jet to get to Muirfield Village. It just cracks me up, Nick. Some of these guys live in a different world that I cannot even get my hands around, but I certainly think I would enjoy that kind of life.
It's a very cool story. I mean, I don't think Koepka has given DeChambeau his plane anytime soon.
No, it's pretty funny, and that is going to be a great event when as you're referencing DeChambeau playing with Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson sometime in July. I think that event's happening. That's going to be the ratings on that are going to be off the charts, I think.
Yeah.
So for this event, you basically are just going to go with Koepka over DJ in the matchup.
That's one matchup I'm looking at. I do have a couple guys that I could mention that I throw a little bit of money on for some outrights and leaderboards. Jonathan Vegas, he's 75 to 1. He's 5 to 1 on a top 10. And this is really exactly the type of field that he performs well in. He finished second at Puerto Rico. Tied for 18th in the Dominican Republic at the Corrales Punta Cana Resort, and then tied for 9th just a couple weeks ago at the Byron Nelson. They're all kind of really weak field events that he does pretty well in, and he ranks 19th on tour in length, but only 144th in accuracy. So that's the worry, of course. But he's a guy that again. He tends to play well early in the tournaments and just doesn't quite have the ability or lost the ability. He does have a couple of wins under his belt, but he doesn't really finish strongly. So Thursday, first round leader or first round matchup type of a plays could be an option on Vegas. But 75 to 1 and 5 to 1 for a top 10, I thought were pretty decent to take a little bit of stab on.
Yeah, that sounds good. I like that play. That is interesting. Anything else that you have? I know you sell your packages for this event, and of course, next week we're going to be talking about the U.S. Open, and that's going to be a big package. I'm sure you'll have available for our viewers over at WagerTalk.com. So, anything that you want to mention about a promotion, the floor is yours.
Yeah, of course we'll have a big U.S. Open pack next week. This week I have my standard $29. It's all 4 days coverage. It's outright leaderboard, matchup plays, and then any daily plays that I'll do, which I usually hit a couple Thursday matchups, and then as the week goes on, I may add in another matchup or two, or even look to get an outright winner, somewhere in the middle of the event or after round 2 or after round 3. So that's already available right now on my page. And then next week, of course, we'll have the U.S. Open. I did a preview video. I'll throw, if you didn't see that, I'll mention on a guy, Vincent Whaley. So I took him Monday night. He was 110 to 1. He's since dropped to 85 to 1, so got a nice little value on him.
Wow.
He's been as consistent as some of the biggest names on tour over the last 4 months. He's made 10 straight cuts. His first event in that run was a tie for 50th, but since then he hasn't been worse than tied for 36th. And over his last 9 starts, he has 7 finishes inside the top 30. He doesn't have a top 10 this year, but in a weak field, a lot of momentum on his side. I think his price is right to take a shot. At DraftKings, he's top 30. Like I said, he's got 7 out of his last 9 starts are top 30s. His top 30 is 2 to 1. So I threw a decent sized bet on him just to get, in that mix and try to double up in the money. But 110 to 1 was too much for me to lay off of, so I threw a little there, and 6 to 1 on the top 10.
Admittedly, I'm a pretty avid golf fan, and I haven't heard of his name. Is he from the Corn Ferry Tour? Or?
Yeah, he's a younger guy that's been, I think this is now his second season. He's a sophomore. So, he's got a little bit more experience under his belt. Obviously, you think of some sophomores like Morikawa or Hovland making a bigger splash. Whaley's been very quiet compared to those guys, but sneaky steady and a good player that's been, he's not offered a lot of the weeks in matchups just because he's not a big name and a lot of people are betting him, but he does have some value when he does pop up on those boards.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great name because that's the type of stuff that I'm sure the viewers would say the same thing I just said. And like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
But all those consecutive cuts, I mean, that's very impressive. I mean, this is truly a guy flying under the radar.
Absolutely. And that's the hard part and the fun part of the PGA Tour is trying to find those type of guys that you can take shots on. And this is the week to do it. Very weak fields. At the Memorial last week, like I said, with so many top heavy guys, and probably next week at the U.S. Open, it's hard to take flyers on these type of guys. But these are the weeks you can do it because 100 to 1 winners come through in the PGA Tour, often, and it's usually these types of events.
Yeah, I can't help but to keep thinking about the U.S. Open next week, Nick. At Torrey Pines, and wondering, what is the score going to be to win that event? It seems, Torrey Pines is a very difficult course, but it's not Kiowa, and they played well at Kiowa with all that wind, and I guess Torrey Pines would be vulnerable if there is no wind to a pretty low score. But we'll save all that topic for next week. But I am curious, because I just can't help myself. Do you have any early leans on guys to take a look at? I mean, do you think Phil actually could be a top 10? Do you think he could contend
at the U.S. Open?
Right.
No. Then again, I would have said the same thing for the PGA Championship, and obviously that was wrong. So I don't know. I would imagine, listen, it's all based on price, right? So how much value is taken away from him now going forward because of that win, I guess yet to be seen. But I'm not excited about it. I think he'll be overpriced because of that win. But, hey, it's Phil. You never know.
You just can't help to want to hope that he does real well. And wouldn't it be? I mean, it would just be unbelievable if he pulled it off and then completed his Grand Slam. I mean, that would be just. There would have to be a movie made about that, like Bagger Vance number part 2, or something great to give a tribute to him for that kind of accomplishment. I think there'll be a movie about Kiowa, with his victory someday. Just remarkable. But for this event, we're going to go with what you said here. I like the matchups that you provided, of course. And guys, this is a man that you want to tail. Mentioned before we went on the air about Marco D'Angelo, one of the co-founders of WagerTalk, and he does horse racing since 1986. And I'll tell you the truth, when that race unfolded, I was stunned because I thought, oh wait, everything he said actually just happened before my very eyes, and it did. And Nick Borrman here is one of those guys too, and it's not just golf. Make sure you get his soccer picks as well, and anything else he has going on over at Wager Talk. So Nick, any final thoughts?
Nope. This is the event again. I'll say it with, take a flyer this week. It's if there's an event, you're going to do it, and golf's fun because it's cool to say that one time, oh, I hit that 100-to-1 guy, or I catch that long shot to get a high leaderboard finish. This is the week to do it. So don't be afraid to look down near the bottom of the list, find some guys that are in decent form but paying at a pretty good number, and take a stab. Next week at the U.S. Open, stick to the top.
Yeah, and I like the Vincent Whaley pick you got at 110-to-1 that is now still 85-to-1. So there's still a chance to get on board that one, guys.
Yep.
So Nick, thanks for being on the show today, and we'll look forward to seeing you this afternoon at about 4:30 on the now infamous Manny's Irish Pub show of the Predictive Playbook with my co-host Rob Vino and Tony Finn and a bunch of other guys, all coming by to share some sports betting knowledge and wisdom and their best bets and free picks, and it's just great. So until then, Nick, on behalf of you, myself, the Predictive Playbook, Sportsmemo.com, and WagerTalk.com, may all the wins be yours.